The following story has been brought to you by StoriesToInspire.org.
Rav Malach Bidman said over that the Ramban, famous Nachmanides, a Rishon, a giant, an angel, in his town once, a young, very special young man passed away. And the Ramban was distraught over the passing of this special young man. And the Ramban wrote a note, a command to the young man that passed away that said as follows: when you get up to heaven, I want you to go to the following gate in heaven, and I want you to ask, why did they take you? Ask Hashem, why did he take you? And I want you to come back and answer me. So distraught was the Ramban over what happened. So difficult is it sometimes to handle the darkness when we can only see with human eyes that the Ramban, such a great man, whose faith was ironclad, he wanted to know the answer. Let me see the answer. I want to know. Let me taste the wisdom and the vision of Hashem. And he had the Chever Kadisha, the burial society, he had them put the note in the hand of the nifter, of the one who had passed. And the man was buried holding on to that note. Later in that very same day, the Ramban was sitting at his table learning, and suddenly the man who was just buried that day shows up. He can see a vision of him in his room. And the man comes and says, "My holy saintly Rabbi, I want you to know that with your note in my hand, they opened up all the gates of heaven. I was able to go exactly where you wanted me to go, even though it was a very high place. With your note, I was able to go. But Rabbi, I apologize. I could not fulfill your request. Because when I stood at that lofty place in heaven, in order to ask your question for you, when I stood there were no questions. It was impossible to form a question, for the clarity from that position was so pristine that there was no question to ask. And therefore, I could not get an answer for you. But from there, it's crystal clear. And to know that the Ramban struggled because it's hard to see with human eyes is one comfort. And to know that when you stand in heaven and you see the world from there isn't even a question to ask. That's its own comfort. There's a story I recall, I believe it was with the Sfas Emes, one of the Ger Rebbes, that in his time, children were being conscripted to the army, taken against the will of their parents. And of course, those that would go off into the army would suffer tremendously and tremendous challenges and maybe never return home. And people, when they had a newborn baby, would actually come running to the Sfas Emes, already at that point fearful for what will be with this baby. Maybe in a few years they'll take this baby from me. And they would come begging, Rebbe, please bless this child, that they should never be taken to the army. And they would come and they would tearfully beg and cry to the Sfas Emes. And the Sfas Emes once said how difficult those requests were. Because while the mother and father were crying, please don't let my child be taken to the army, he said the soul of the baby was crying to him, please let me go to the army. Please let me go through that darkness and that challenge to fulfill my mission in this world. To carry Hashem's banner where he wants me to. The Sfas Emes, who could hear both cries, said it was difficult to know what to do. Because the soul of the baby, the neshama that had the clarity, that darkness is part of the mission. That darkness comes before Vayihi Or, let there be light. that this is part of the journey. We as the soldiers of Hashem, this is what we do. This is what we signed up for. We don't know how. I don't know how going to the army does that. But that soul knew. That baby knew his calling. And the Sfas Emes who could hear it struggled.
Enjoyed this story? Come again. Bring a friend. StoriesToInspire.org